Okay, we're in 2023 finally.
Wow.
Yep.
How about that year 2022?
Yeah, 2022 was it was a very fast year in a lot of ways and a very interesting year in a lot of ways. We saw a big growth in the real estate sales, and then we saw a fairly quick change in attitude and market conditions, and saw that slow down quite a bit. So
That happened like around mid-year, right around June, right?
right around June, yeah, we saw. I think it's safe to say the market itself peaked in June. Looking at the numbers, we had some of the highest prices that we've seen. We had the lowest inventory that we've seen in a long time, and I know we've been beating that drum for almost a decade now. And on top of it, we just saw multiple offers and over asking still.
Yep.
June was a hot time.
Boy, but what a change since then. It's almost like we had two entirely different markets last year.
Yeah, and I think that's the story here is, okay, in 2023, looking ahead, we have to kind of look back and say, where were we in 2022, and what do we need to plan for? So what happened at the end of the year?
Well, I think people stood up looking at themselves, wondering, what am I in for? What's next year going to be like? Is it going to be a continuation of the last quarter, the last 2 quarters of 2022? My prediction is that's what we're going to be looking at for probably the next 6 months. And I think there's a lot of optimism out there that is going to slowly shift and change. No more increasing interest rates after we get another minor hike or two. And I think hopefully that'll make the affordability index a lot better for locals, because it's the locals that are hurting the most in this kind of market.
Yeah, definitely. I think you look back at when things were just rising, and we saw multiple cash offers and prices, 100,000 over asking, things like that. Those were coming from bigger markets. That was inward money. That wasn't necessarily here in Santa Fe. That was a lot of migration from other metro areas that had seen themselves have really rapid price growth. So, the last 2 years, I would really say, if you wrapped up, were almost a totally different market than anything we've ever experienced. And you've obviously been doing this a lot longer than I have, and so I'm curious your perspective on it.
If you look at the total number of sales and the volume for 2022, the number of transactions were right on par with about 5 years ago in 2016. Of course, the volume wasn't anywhere near close.
Right.
What's interesting is we lost about 25% of our market transactions last year compared to 2021. And yet the volume was down just a little bit. So that shows you the substantial increase in average price and a lot more sales in that $1 million plus range. The luxury market's been very active.
So what's it going to take to bring prices into some sort of affordability?
I think this is the shift in the market that we have needed to bring about some balance. After all, the market was just too hot, too crazy for too long. That's not healthy. So the day of reckoning is on us. And in a shifting market like this, we've got to adapt. Prices are changing, values are changing. You look at the U-Haul index and the number of people moving to Santa Fe and to New Mexico. We were 10 in
2021. Yeah.
Right. And in 2022, we dropped down to 19.
Yeah.
That's a real shift.
That is a big shift, yeah. So, Gab, from your perspective, you said a word, David, I think that is really apropos, which is balance, right? And so, it felt like it was an extremely strong seller's market for a very long time.
Yep.
That's somewhat, not necessarily over, but it's definitely come to a halt. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective on the transactional side, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, rebalance is definitely the word for it, because what we've seen over the past couple of years, right, it's been this feeding frenzy, right? Low inventory, people are trying to get into houses. It's been really aggressive. And it's created a lot of hostility between buyers and sellers, right? Sellers want to get top dollar. Buyers are in a difficult position trying to purchase something. So they've been bumping heads a lot. I think what we're seeing now is people are starting to find some common ground. There was a period where sellers were still trying to push the envelope, right? Still trying to get that high price. And I think now expectations are starting to get more in alignment. We're seeing more negotiations. that we haven't been seeing in a while. There were a lot of cash offers. There were a lot of contingencies waived. It was just kind of a crazy period of buyers trying to do anything they could to get that property. Now we're starting to see negotiations on inspections, and sellers are starting to give a little bit more. So I don't feel like it's as hostile as it was before, which is good. So you can definitely see in the transactions that rebalancing occurring, even just from an attitude perspective or expectations.
Gabs, are you seeing more terminations in this kind of market now that it's shifting, or less?
Less. Of course, there's going to be terminations here and there. It just depends on the property. But for a while there, we were seeing several coming through on a weekly basis, and now it's kind of tapered off a little bit. We're seeing more of a normal rate when it comes to terminations. Yeah.
I think when markets are shifting, everybody's trying to find their way through it. And they start to get nervous. Is now the right time? Is this the right time to buy? I mean, how many times have we heard the real estate community always talk about, oh my gosh, this is a good time to buy?
It's always a good
They
time.
always say that.
Yeah, they always say that.
Come on. BS, that's not true. It's about individual circumstances, where you are, and weighing the options that you have. That's really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to remember that, pricing and interest rates and all these sort of components, it's only one factor in that decision, right? If you're starting a family or you're changing jobs, that should not hold you back from those decisions, because it's just one component of it. And that's something that's changed over the years. It used to feel like people talked more about homes and a little less about assets. And now it sounds like everyone's talking about everything's an asset. Fundamentally, if you're going to live here and be a part of the community, you need a place that you're proud of, that you can live in. Obviously, affordability is a factor, and we're seeing some organizations like HomeWise do a really great job of trying to bring that to market. Right?
Yes.
Congratulations to them; they're doing a great job there.
They're doing a fantastic job. I think the question we get more than any other is, where are prices now? What's happening? Is the market still going up in value? Has it flattened? Is it dropping off? What is your take on that?
Well, I think we almost have to take a step back over a decade to really talk about pricing, because when the market crashed in 2008, 2009, there was a total loss of builders and developers and projects that provided new inventory to the housing world. And Santa Fe was no exception to that. In fact, I would say Santa Fe was probably some of the worst, right? You had a lot of projects come to a screeching halt, and prices got depressed. And you have nearly a decade of not a lot coming to market in terms of new properties. And then you have this event with the pandemic, which just everything changed, right? And it blew up, and all of a sudden we're even squeezed tighter and tighter on that inventory front. Right. And we have projects now. I mean, you can drive around town, you see the permits hung up on homes and on lots, and you see the construction, for better and for worse is, I'm sure some people don't like to see it, but at the same time, trying to find affordability is only going to be brought down by having inventory for folks. And so, I think if you look at the big picture, inventory is still the biggest challenge.
It is, even though our inventory is substantially higher by about 100%?
Yeah, it's doubled
this time last year.
Yeah.
So it's doubled, and yet I continue to hear complaints about there not being enough inventory.
Right, and that just shows how much of a hole we're in. And even let's say City Hall decided to permit everything coming to their plate right now, and builders get the green light. You're still probably looking at 5 to 7 years before we reach a certain level of inventory where you get that balance back. And so, if we're being realistic, as long as the demand is high to live in Santa Fe and we struggle with the inventory, prices are going to take some pushing to get down.
Ever since 2008, we have had continued increases in population, particularly people incoming to Santa Fe, and yet building came to a complete halt in 2008. And only now, just recently started. So we have a lot of buyers out there who need to get into the market, want to get into the market, but they're not in it yet.
Mm-hmm. And if we're honest, I think that's going to be the challenge for this town for a long time, right?
Sure.
This is a very desirable place to live. We see a lot of clientele coming from the larger metro areas trying to escape the cities. Of course, they turn Santa Fe into the place they usually left. That's kind of the story of humankind. But That's our future challenge is how do we balance the affordability for people who are currently living here while there's all these other people that want that experience, they want a place here. There's a lot of work to be done.
The other interesting shift that we're starting to see is beyond just numbers of houses and vacant land sales. Look at the brokerage community. I sense a real shakeup and a lot more movement there. There seems to be a lot going on. Gabs, what do you think?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's it's actually been interesting this year. I've seen it more so than any other year. People just needing to find what works best for them, different strategies. We're talking about how we can better ourselves and our client experience internally. I think everybody's through that, going through that evaluation process themselves. Both brokers and brokerages.
It's interesting from my perspective because what I see is, look, we are in an industry that delivers a very homogenous type of service.
Yes.
Bottom line.
Yeah.
And yet, if you look at the Santa Fe brokerage market, you have a lot of very good, strong offices and very different personalities and styles within offices, different office environments. So I think there are a lot of changes there. And I think this shakeup in the market is driving brokers to step back, take a look at themselves and re-examine, is the brokerage I'm working with now providing what I need to help me do a better job for my clients?
Well, and I hate to say it, there's a reckoning in the industry right now. It's like we're fairly insulated here in Santa Fe. Our sales and volume, we're down 20-ish% year over year, and that was a very high number to come off of. So it's like we're still in a pretty safe spot. Other markets haven't fared so well. I'm looking at like Boise, Denver,
yes,
Austin. For them, they're seeing substantial changes.
Oh.
We're talking 50-60% declines.
Remember talking to Isaiah from Austin?
Yeah.
The Austin market was off 90% at one point in transaction numbers.
Which is,
wow.
That's a tough pill to swallow for anyone, right? Any business. But then you see it from the top too, right? You have these publicly traded large groups, without necessarily going too deep into names, but you're looking at Compass and Sotheby's and Coldwell and these sort of organizations. A lot of them have seen their stock prices drop in half. It's just totally cut in half, right? There's a lot of downward pressure from those bigger markets where Santa Fe's, we're fairly small fish in that big pond.
Yes, we are.
And so the squeeze is on in a lot of places. And I think that's going to be a challenge moving forward is how do you manage a changing market?
Yeah, that's the part that's interesting because there are a lot of different business strategies that one can implement. In a down market, do you cut costs? Do you lay off employees? Right. Do you double down? Do you hire staff and invest more into the business because you think there may be opportunities out there? Two very different strategies. And I think in this market, we're going to see both of those get employed.
Yeah, absolutely. And from our perspective, this is an opportunity to reassess where we're at, reflect what we're doing. I think the big opportunity is just being committed to supporting the local community and trying to do the right thing there. And that's that's the challenge that is for us to take on and to meet. And as we sit here and talk data all day long, numbers are only part of the story. At the end of the day, we all want a place that we're proud to live in, right? And
we need to do our part.
We need to
participate.
Yeah.
So I was delighted to hear about the new philanthropy policy that the company has adopted and encouraging its brokers to get out and participate more with nonprofit organizations. That's really spectacular. We have to have a strong giving back to our community because we get a lot from it.
Yeah. I think this is an exciting year for us in that regard. I really want to support those organizations that support us, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's our job.
So predictions for 2023. How do you think we're going to end up this year? This is the time we're supposed to call that, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to start with Gabs on that one. What's your prediction?
Well, like you said, this is still a desirable place to be. Whether it's people shifting around within Santa Fe or other markets entering into our market. I think a lot of people are hoping and waiting to see what the prices and interest rates are going to do. But being in Santa Fe, low inventory, still high demand, I think we'll see a little bit of a drop in prices, but I don't think it's going to be as substantial as people are hoping for. That's my prediction.
Well, it depends on which side you're on, right? If you're
Yeah.
the seller, it's priced music to your ears. If you're a buyer, that might not sit well.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, David? What do you think is
I
going to
think
come?
the first half of the year is going to be sluggish. I think you're going to have concern. You're going to see concern from the point of view of local brokers and brokerages. But I think towards the third quarter, I think we're going to have some easing in those conditions. And I think we're going to start to see transaction numbers pick back up again. I don't think we're going to see any further reductions in pricing than we already have seen. I think the market may be off a value of perhaps 10%, and maybe that's just kind of the frothiness that we lost once we got rid of all the multiple offers and bidding. Those are going away, except in rare cases. So I think all in all, the 23 market is going to be slightly lower than 2022 in terms of transaction numbers. And I think the volume will be just a smidgen less.
Yeah, and I think I share that optimism, if I'm safe to use that word. The end of this last year where things really slowed down, a number of things happened, right? We had the interest rates suddenly went up. Granted, they're still historically fairly low, but compared to where they were just the year before, they seem very high. And people had to readjust their expectations and reevaluate their financial situations and make some choices there. So there's that. We had the midterm elections, which we know historically elections have always factored into the buying process. And so we had that. And then on top of it, it's winter. We have the holidays. And not a lot of people like to move during that time of year. And so the seasonality of our business also impacts that. So it's hard to read the last quarter and say, oh, this is the trend.
Right.
There's
Too many factors.
there's too many other factors in there that I just don't think fully tell the story. So I'm a little bit more I think I'm a little bit more bullish. I do think that the spring, the jitters are still out there. People are finding their footing. The rebalancing that Gabs was talking about between sellers and buyers will continue. And that by summer, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where a healthy market has returned. Buyers will have options. Prices will still be relatively high. But we'll have a good churn rate again. And, I don't think the sky is falling by any measure.
No. The other part I like about this is it gives us almost a bit of a pause, if you will, because our transaction numbers were down, right? I mean, the market was down in transaction numbers about 25, 26%. Our numbers were down about 18%, so we're doing better than the market. With that little slowdown, that gives us an opportunity to really examine what we're doing.
Yes.
Why we're doing it. Does that have real value to our associate brokers and to their clients and the community at large? So it gives us an opportunity to reevaluate that and make some adjustments and improvements.
Yeah, it's been hard. We've had a lot of great ideas shared amongst the three of us that were just going, got to find the time.
Yeah.
Right. And, now we can breathe a little bit, take that pressure off steam's a little bit out. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. In some ways, I think people should be more optimistic than they are currently about what's in store.
Well, it's hard to ignore all the media PR out there. So
yeah, there is that. Can't control that, but we can control what we see here locally.
yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to 2023. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm
High
excited.
But before we're done, if you are a seller, what's the recommendation for a seller right now? What would you tell them? What's the advice?
The advice is always you need to really make sure you understand you're taking all the factors into consideration before making a decision about selling a property. Market timing can be wonderful when you're right, but how can you always be right? Only in the rearview mirror can you really understand that. So you just have to take a look at all the current market conditions. What are the issues that are impacting your decision process? Look at your options, make sure you understand all those, and then make a careful decision.
Okay, Gabs, if you're a buyer, what's the advice to a buyer?
I think it's the buyers are in a better position than they've been over the past couple of years.
Even despite interest rates?
Even despite interest rates. I know that that's a factor, but like you said, historically, they've been much higher in the past. With the inventory changes, I think it gives them a lot more options. So they're not in that rushed situation where they might potentially experience buyer's remorse. You know,
Yeah.
they have a little more time to be able to check out the property, do their due diligence, and select a property that's right for them and whatever their needs are for them and their family. So I think they're better positioned right now to be able to make some decisions that are going to work well for them.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to look at a property and maybe sleep on it overnight before having to write an offer.
Not have to write an offer before you see it.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's like those conditions are, for the most part, they're gone. Inventory is up. Prices have settled out to a certain point where, yeah, I think I agree. You know, if you're a buyer, now is actually almost a better time than just 6 months ago.
Yep.
Despite everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait for the end of the year. We'll need to dial back to see what we said.
Yeah, we'll go back
Play
and
back.
go back to
How good we are
YouTube
in
and
our
check what we
predictions.
said. Yeah, it's like, oh no. Yeah, don't hold us to it. You know, I mean, let's be honest. The last couple of years, there's been so many curveballs thrown.
Oh,
There's been so many curveballs. I think a lot of us have a little bit of PTSD of trying to predict what tomorrow's going to bring.
Yeah.
But ultimately, looking at what we can see, you know, in our data sets and the activity going on in this office, I think we're in a spot where we're going to see some changes, but just not as dramatic as people are thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. You know what? Some boring times sound good.
Works for me.
They may not be boring from the brokerage perspective because I see a lot of
Oh,
change
yeah, for
going
sure.
on right now there.
Yeah.
That will be very interesting to see how that shakes out by the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I agree. Let's take a look at the end of the year, see how we did on these predictions. But, you know, for everyone else sitting at home, if you got any questions, concerns, throw it in the comments. You know, we will all interact in that. We love to answer those questions. And we look forward to seeing what the rest of this year has in store.
Exciting times.
Absolutely.
Bueno.